Good morning and welcome to those of you joining us online. You found us at Surprise Christian Church. I'm TJ Kummerfeld. I'm the preacher out here. I'm so happy that you're tuning in to join us. I would love for you to come in and visit us 10:30 on Sunday mornings. We're here every Sunday. But coming up in September, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff on Saturdays. The 13th, we're going to have a concert in the backyard starting at 5 o'clock. Would love for you to come out and join us. And we've got so much more. But you got to come in and join us. I'm looking forward to see what the future has for us here, as well as for you, wherever you might be watching from. We're in the book of Job today. Job is a story that many of us are familiar with on the surface. We can sum it up in a few sentences. For a book that's 42 chapters long, that's a little strange at times. But there's so much in here. And where we're going to be focusing today is on the culture of the time. The culture around Job, the culture of Israel, the culture of God's people, of what was seen as normal versus what God was doing. And that's the title of our message today, Christianity versus Culture. Where we're asking this question today, does our culture view us as normal or weird? If we're seen as normal by our culture, then is our culture Christian? Or are we acting Christian enough? And I think that comes in really clearly at Job chapter 12. That's where we're going to be starting today. Job chapter 12, verses 4 through 14. And I invite you to stand in the honor of the reading of God's scriptures today. Job chapter 12, 4 through 14. I have become a laughingstock to my friends. Though I called on God and he answered, a mere laughingstock, though righteous and blameless. Those who are at ease have contempt for misfortune, as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. The tents of marauders are undisturbed, and those who provoke God are secure, those God has in his hands. But ask the animals, and they will teach you. Or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. Or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature, and the breath of all mankind. Does not the ear test words? Has the tongue taste food? Is not wisdom found among the aged? Does not long life bring understanding? To God belong wisdom and power. Counsel and understanding are his. What he tears down cannot be rebuilt, and those he imprisons cannot be released. May God add to the blessing of our understanding of his words today. You may be seated. Job is in a unique situation, and there's quite a few things unique to the book of Job. He is seen to be an upstanding man of great influence and power and authority, great renown to those around him. Yet, when Satan comes to God and asks to tempt Job, and God gives permission, Satan can't touch his soul, we see how everyone turns on Job. Because the theology at the time is if you are blessed, then you are righteous. God blesses the righteous and judges the unrighteous, curses or condemns the unrighteous. So while Job has wealth, he's righteous. When it's all taken away, well, who in your family sinned? How did you sin against God? It's your fault. It's not just an accident. God did this for a reason or a purpose to teach you. And we see Job's friends and family and town around him all tell him to repent. Now, I'm not here to say if Job was the best Christian. We all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and he's no different. He had his own flaws. But he's seen as blameless and righteous, and he even states so. And not that he's perfect again, but he is truly worshiping and seeking after God. And that's what we see in the first few verses of verse 4. I've become a laughingstock to my friends, so I called on God, and he answered. There's so much that can be just in that phrase. I've become a laughingstock to my friends, even though I called on God, and he answered. Just because God answers doesn't mean everything is going to go away, does not mean that everything is going to become better. But what it does mean is you have a relationship with God, that you are faithfully listening to him, because God always hears us. But we don't always listen for his response. And he states it again in the second part of verse 4, a mere laughingstock, even though I'm righteous and blameless. Verse 5 and 6 is where it gets a little confusing. Those who are at ease have contempt for misfortune, as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. The tents of marauders are undisturbed, and those who provoke God are secure. Those God has in his hands. I think Job is having a difficult conversation and coming to understand something difficult to understand about God. God doesn't only bless the righteous, he blesses the unrighteous. God doesn't stop the unrighteous from becoming blessed or building great wealth and power for themselves. The real blessings come after the death. And I think that's what Job is coming to realize. Just because you have contempt or misfortune doesn't mean God is away from you. And just because you have great wealth, status, and power doesn't mean you're next to God. That's not the case. Job went, and even though he didn't change, if anything, he became more devoted to God as he lost his family, as he lost his wealth, his status, his power. He never gave up pursuing God. He never failed to continue to seek after, reach after, and worship him. And I think he gets that mindset from having nothing. Having to look around, because that's what we see in the second portion here. Ask the animals, and they will teach. The birds in the sky, and they will tell, or speak to the fish in the sea, and they will inform you. Which of these animals, who we see as mindless, brainless, which of these animals do not know that the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. Job is being challenged about what the culture has brought. You see, again, their culture taught if you're righteous, if you have wealth status, you're righteous, you're perfect, you're blameless, you're a Pharisee, you're following the law. But if you're poor, sick, have disaster come across you, then you're sinful. And that was the norm. That was their way of thinking, and I think it's something we still have today. We look around at the church and we see those of influence, those who have authority and power at the church, and we think they have to be the closest to God of anyone else here. And while we hope that's the truth, look at the churches around us, and would you say the same for them? Christianity and culture are always at war. Our relationship with God and the culture around us are always at war. Job wasn't sinful because all of these things had been taken away. God was teaching a lesson, but his people weren't listening. It's really a challenge, and it's something that continues on. We see Job continuing to seek after God. No, not perfectly, but still seeking and worshiping and following the ways of God. Yet time and time again, his friends and family say, just give up, just repent, give up on God, and life will be easier. And I wonder how much he was tempted to do so because the culture said he was wrong. But because of his relationship with God, he knew he was right. It's something Jesus had in the New Testament as well. If you flip to the book of Matthew chapter 12, when Jesus is stated to be Lord over the Sabbath, when he works on the Sabbath, it's against the culture, it's against religion, it's against the law, as they say. But in Matthew chapter 12, verse 1, we see Jesus and his disciples. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." Jesus answered them in verse 3, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do so, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath, and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." When we get so caught up on the do's and don'ts, the right way of acting, the right way of thinking, the right way of presenting ourselves, we lose aspect of our relationship with God. You see, culture around us is constantly changing. I'm astonished, being the old man that I am, looking at those younger than me and saying, "Are you crazy? Do you not think?" And I'm not that much older. I'm only in my late 20s now. But it's a difference that we see. Especially here in America, our culture seems to be at war with Christianity. Our culture seems to want to rip everything away. Sure, there are some good spots that they leave in of love everyone. That's not bad. That sounds good. That is good. But then we need to define what love is. And I've asked you to do it a few times, and if you have, think back to the responses you found. Ask 3 different generations to define what love is. From love being a commitment to one another through sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, all the way down to being something that sounds eerily similar to lust, or just liking one another, desiring one another, and that's it. We're called to live a Christian life. We're called to follow Christian standards, the Christian thinking, Christian ways. And all throughout Scripture, those who follow God are seen as weird. Look at the difference in Paul's life, from the change of him being Saul to Paul. The radical difference from ending lives to saving lives. From persecuting the church to being its biggest advocate. From condemning those he didn't agree with, to taking the time to speak with them, to love one another, to encourage one another. I think that's what Job was trying to do, to try and help his family, his friends, to understand. But they were so caught up in culture that they couldn't understand what God was teaching. I think it's something the church falls into as well. We get so caught up in what the culture is doing, what the culture is teaching, and we find wiggle room and gray area that we think of for the church to fit in there. Yet, it's a step away from God. In Sunday school, in 1 Kings 18, Elijah puts to the test All of Israel, the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom of Israel. They had fallen into worshiping the Baals and Balaams, and he tells all 850 of their prophets from those two gods to come and make a sacrifice. And he'll make a sacrifice by himself on the behalf of God. And he tells Israel, you can't serve two masters, only one. We still have the same war today. Will we serve the Baals, the Balaams of our world, the lust, the greed, the desire, or will we follow God? Because if we follow God, it's going to look different. We're going to be weird. And that's okay. Because that's a question we have to ask ourselves. Do the people around us see us as weird? Or are we normal? Do we fit in? I really want us to ask ourselves that question. Are we weird? Or are we normal? You see, we're still going to fit into the world. We're not going to become aliens to it. Because this is the world that we live in. We need to eat. We need to drink. We need to survive. We have to have a job. We need to provide for our families. Otherwise, we are worse than the pagans and non-believers. But are our beliefs Christian or according to the culture? Do we speak like a Christian or like an American? And this is where we start to wrestle with the differences, because we're called to a higher standard of living. Yet I think oftentimes we want to just be seen as normal. We just want to fit in. But if we're so focused on fitting in and being normal, then we're missing what God has taught us to do, what God has taught us to be. Because if we're normal and fit in, then we're just saying those around us are Christian. We're saying that our culture is Christian and that this is normal. And I don't know about you. I don't think that America has been acting very Christian. And if I'm seen as normal by those around us, if I'm seen as normal by folks who have never stepped foot in a church, then what light is shining through for me for them to ask a question? What's different about my life that would make them want to give up their Sunday morning rest to come to church? If I'm not seen as weird, then I'm saying our culture is Christian, and I can't say that. There are too many differences that I don't agree with. And it's not just a political spectrum, as everybody likes to make things political. It's a way of life. To love and care for one another, to be the man God has called me to be the head of a household. Well, I got a wife that comes to church. She loves God. So I need to love and seek after God even more so I can still be that head of the household that I'm called to be. To provide for the family. So yes, I'm going to work a regular job. I work at the church. But I'm going to put everything I have into it because it is my duty and responsibility as a man, and especially as a man of God, to provide for my family. Yet we get so caught up in the moments around us, in the way of culture around us. Love everyone. Yes, that's great. What is love? Helping, healing, rebuking at times. Some of the best things my mom ever did to me was put me over her knee and tell me that was wrong. I don't get upset with her for it. I deserved it. You can ask her. That's love in sickness and in health, rich or poor, not just some feeling. So what's different about us from the culture around us? Is it just that we come to church on a Sunday morning and spend a couple hours or a few hours here instead of sleeping in, doing yard work? Coach isn't here. Watching football. What's different? Because if we're saying there's supposed to be a difference, what should it look like? A family. How divided are the families around us? I know we have a lot of teachers, a lot of folks who work in schools. How divided are the families in your classrooms? Do you see a difference between those who are professed Christian versus those who don't attend church? Do you see a difference in the speech, in the words that come out of our mouths? Are we cursing like a sailor like those around us, or do we use different words? Do we express ourselves differently? Do they see us so devoted to the Bible that there's no other books that we are reading? Do they see us change the channel if something inappropriate comes on, or do we let the ads continue to play that get worse and worse? Do we let the shows continue to play? Because if we're called to be a Christian, we're called to make a change. We're called to be different. We're not called to be normal, or we're called to be abnormal. Jesus didn't fit into the culture around him, and they thought they were following it perfectly. The Pharisees were the righteous of the righteous. They were the ones who made laws and changed laws, yet Jesus told them that they were being stupid. He went against what they taught, against what they preached. He was different, and he didn't fit in, just as Job was different and didn't fit in. In nations and in people who were professed Christians, professed believers of God, we see the true followers be different. Interesting. What sets us apart from those around us? What sets us apart from the Christians around us? To God, in Job 12:13, to God belong wisdom and power, counsel and understanding are his. What he tears down cannot be rebuilt. Those he imprisons cannot be released. If he holds back the waters, there is drought. If he lets them loose, they devastate the land. To him belongs strength and insight. Both deceived and deliverer are his. You want to talk about what's different? What would set us apart? Disagreeing and getting along. How many people can you disagree with on Friday and go out for breakfast with on Saturday? How many people, if you don't agree and believe in everything that I agree and believe in, does that divide us and we can no longer speak to or talk to one another? Both deceived and deliverer are his. We are Christians. We are called to be different. Do we act different? Do we act different from our culture? Or is the only difference in us our Sunday morning come to Jesus, and then we go home and we act just like everyone else? I prefer being normal. I prefer fitting in. Oftentimes I don't like to cause ripples. That's why I like to stand up here and preach sermons like this. You can't touch me. This is my stage. You can't come up here. But it's a sermon to me just as much as to you. I'm a preacher. There's a lot of stuff different about me. But I still try to fit in with the culture. And that's not right. We can't be a slave to two masters. You're either following God or you're following the Baals or the Balaams of this world. Revelation chapter 3, we see the church of Laodicea. They're lukewarm. Jesus wants to spit them out of their mouth. It would have been better if they were hot or cold, but he cannot stand us being lukewarm. I think the American church has become lukewarm because we're not different. We want to fit in. We want to be inviting, which is good, but we focus so much on being inviting that we lose track of the message. A message preached in love, the message of Jesus. That's what we're called to share. That's what makes us different. The biggest difference I see, and it's not day-to-day life. It comes at the worst moments of life. It comes at funerals. When I see a believer pass away, I see a family rejoicing. Their hearts hurt, but they rejoice that they're in heaven. When I see someone where they're questionable of their faith, I see hearts that are broken, families left with questions and hope that remains uncertain. There's another key difference. What is different from us to our culture? It's a question you have to ask today. I want you to work on it and think about it this week. As we do this time of invitation, if you want to step out and be different by giving your life to Christ for the first time to accept the waters of baptism, I invite you to come down this aisle to make that weird decision, that good, pure, and righteous decision. If you want to join us at Surprise Christian Church and become a member of the church, I also invite you to come down this aisle as we strive to stand out, to be different, and be wholly devoted to God. I invite you to stand as we sing our invitational song.